Look, thank you, Chair. I'll run through very quickly each project. I always find it quite useful, and hopefully you do. Hawke, we have selected a preferred tenderer, and I've stressed the word preferred because it hasn't yet been officially awarded and agreed, but it is public knowledge. That's Phoenix Contracting Limited, who has come out on top with that process. We hope that by the end of next week that we will have a signed contract with that contractor, and that they will be beginning to mobilise on site around the week of the 11th of August. So that is a great milestone for the program to finally see a project being built. Whirinaki, look, I'm really pleased to report that that project's proceeding really well. We'll split that contract, I think I might have mentioned that to you previously, between the state highway work and the other stop banking work, because it just makes sense to do that, particularly given the specifics around working on NZTA State Highway. We will have updated QS for you in a month's time, because we're waiting on that at the moment, particularly the State Highway works. And there'll be a point in the next couple of weeks where we can put our first QS ruler over it. But there is a confidence at the moment that we are good around our revised budget of 23. So I hope that that's where it'll be in a month's time when I update you again. Wairoa, it's all about that land access. And there are two properties that are currently problematic for us, and that there is a lot of effort going in to try and convince, if that's the right word, the property owners to provide access that will allow the project to proceed with the haste that we're keen to see. One issue there is that we are looking at an early contractor involvement procurement approach, because we think it will allow us to maximise the construction over the 25-26 construction year, because if we don't do that, this project is likely to go into the 27-28 construction season, and that is not a good thing for anybody. And so that is why we're going down the route that we are around procurement. Ohiti Mahu will be the next one that has its consent lodged, and that is not far away at all. And an updated QS will be done very shortly, but that is progressing well as well. Pakawhai, we have finally struck a finalised alignment. I'll be sharing that with property owners between Franklin Road and Links Road on Friday, and to be able to tell them where our alignment is. It means that we will be going forward to the technical advisory group that Chris has and the program board to seek dispensation to build a flood wall on part of the alignment because of the footprint issues that would arise otherwise. And now the consideration that is being given is just what the nature around the materials of that flood wall will be. And there are a number of options that have been explored on that front. And otherwise, I believe that we will this week reach agreement for one of our critical whole of property purchases. And I am pushing the land access team to get agreements in front of me, because we haven't got enough done yet. And I believe that as soon as we can create a momentum and visibility around momentum in the community, hopefully we'll see more of that locking down. We're having regular and critical discussions with the Joan Fernie Charitable Trust, who are fundamental to this project, both with the land footprint we require and the consequential flooding impact that results on their property as well. And we've got our next meeting scheduled for the week after next with them on that. Porongahau, as indicated when we talked about the pump station project, Porongahau currently is our budget blowout project. Or exceedance project. Blowout's a little bit too emotional, isn't it? Exceedance project would be a better way. I think, as I said to you before, we think we've done everything we can on this project to value engineer it. We now need to put it to market and see what the market can do for us on this front. And you're never going to get a better market than we've got at the moment, with how hungry the contractors are. And therefore, all of our focus is to do that just as quickly as we can. The timing for that is probably September, when we will have that in market. Pump stations, I won't labour on. You've had the update on that just a little while ago. Telemetry and scheme reviews going really well. We'll be bringing back a revised cost estimate on telemetry, which will pull that budget down by $1.5 million. And I forgot to mention that on on Waiheck as well. Our budget will be pulled back $1.5 million. So we'll be having, sitting on the side here, $3 million that can be allocated with the approval of the Chief Executive of NIF to projects where we have anticipated cost overruns. So
Regenerator.
That's good news. They needed it on Paronga How initially, at least. Levels of service, rapid repairs, upgrades, everything's trending in the right direction there. Just to remind you that they're not covered by the OAC consenting process. So we need to walk our way through that to make sure that we can consent those projects as quickly as possible. We expect to appoint next week the designers for Waipawa. And just to remind you that Brookfields and Omahu have already been designed under IRG projects, but there will be some final modification to those designs, and we hope to go to market on those before the end of the year as well. Finally, we have an extremely ambitious procurement program over the next 6 months. You would have seen that on the schedule here. That was an appendix to your papers, and even NIF has said how ambitious this is. It is the area where we need to make sure that we have the resources necessary to deliver that. We are keeping the market as updated as possible around what that pipeline of opportunity looks like, and to be doing everything we can to deliver to that schedule that we've got so that we can award the tenders as we intend to, and for these contractors to be on the ground maximising as much of the 25-26 construction season as possible. And for some of these projects, they will be finished by the end of the first quarter of next year. Waiheck will be in that category. I believe Ohiti will be in that category, and that is what we're aiming for with Whirinaki as well.
Thank you, Andrew. Any succinct questions for Andrew? Councillor Van Dyke.
Yeah, Andrea, thank you very much for that update. It's always really good to hear that you're working hard to keep them as lean and mean as possible. Resources. So to get to the point that you actually get a contract awarded, you get people on site, how are your resources with the next project, the process of that project, to actually looking after making sure that it gets done properly? And
We've been putting a lot of effort into that, and we've recently got on board a construction manager who will have the on-site supervision of the contractor as his responsibility. We are clear about the management side of the MSQA acronym around the management, supervision and quality assurance. The management will be done by the project managers, and the quality assurance will be provided by the designers as they need to input. There will be support as well by the independent certifier, which is the NZ 3910/2023 contract requirements now, and all of those bits are in place. One of the critical parts that we've got are to ensure that our consent conditions are adhered to as well, and one of the people in the PMO has been doing a lot of work on that, and we have lined up the pieces around cultural monitoring, ecological monitoring, and the construction environmental management plans as well. The health and safety requirements. So look, the proof of the pudding is always in the eating, but I think the component parts are in place and we're ready to go.
because that's where we really could actually get ourselves into some real issues if you don't have that in place and you haven't got the capacity to monitor.
Yep. But and fortunately, Waiheck is one of the simpler projects that we've got, and so it's good for us to cut our teeth on that rather than one of the more complicated ones that we know is coming.
Mm-hmm. Councillor Sears.
Kia ora, thank you, Chair. On Rongoho, I know some of it is residential housing. Do we consider, does our brief go as wide as looking at moving of houses? I know there's a lot of Māori land there, so I'm not trying to step into that, but do we, when there's 4.6 million, is there a possibility of looking at some other options around moving of houses or people to help?
That was originally what the budget was built on, the assumption that there would be house lifting.
Yes.
As I understand it, that was assessed as being not a feasible or sensible option to pursue. There is an element of house lifting still proposed on the southern side of the Prongahau River, which will likely proceed. I say that because some people actually don't want their houses lifted. We've got that situation in Wairoa now because there are 3 properties in Frasertown where house lifting is a solution there. And some people are saying, I don't want my house lifted. And so we've got to work through that as to what other options we may have to still provide the protection to move them from 2C to 1. But what is it if it's not house lifting? And house lifting actually is expensive. It is surprising us as to what those quotes are coming in at, I can tell you. There's a lot of services complication with it. It's not as straightforward sometimes as I thought it might be.
Okay, so we're definitely exploring all the options.
We are. But with Prongahau, with where we are, the sooner we get it to market, the better.
Okay.
Thank you. Are there any further questions?
Oh, just a quickie.
Yes.
I'm sure I'm clutching at straws here, but is there a situation where we invite contractors to say, look, we reckon if you did it this way as opposed to the brief you've given us, it'll give you as good a result and cost quite a bit less? Does that ever happen?
Look, it can. And we've been, on Parkify, for example, we've been dealing with a number of, particularly when it's come to the flood wall side, the constructors for that type of approach, and they're invaluable, absolutely invaluable with the ideas that they come up with. And equally, we've been working with some of our advisors around their experience with options on that front as well. That's one of the principal reasons we're getting early contractor involvement in Wairoa as well, is just the phasing of it, the building of it, and some of the options around what is finally designed as well. But for a lot of the, like Ohiti, for example, is a relatively straightforward project. Even Whirinaki now is quite straightforward. And so I think some of that constructability, design option stuff has already been flushed away, if I could use that term, and we've simplified what it is that we're going to build. Prongahau would be one of our more complicated still.
Okay.
And it may be that the contractors come to respond with suggestions, which are always an option in terms of tender submissions.
Yep, okay.
Okay. Are you happy to move Councillor McIntosh the paper?
Yep, sure.
And happy to second?
Yep.
All those who agree say aye.
Aye.
Those against?
Chair, just before we finish the item, could I just acknowledge the contribution of Jess Bennett,
Yes, of course.
who finishes up with us in the PMO on 2 weeks on Friday. Jess has done a huge amount of heavy lifting on this program and come at some cost. So all the best,
Yeah,
Jess.
all the best,
Thank you
Jess.
for everything
How
you've
about
done.
you, mate? Thank you.
And she's going to be hard to replace.
Absolutely. Go well, Jess. Thank you. Team, we move on to item 14. It's an update on the progress of the implementations from the Independent Flood Review. Are we happy to take them as read? And then for questions?
Yes.
Yes? Okay. Louise, could we just do a brief without
One slide.
one slide? Okay, and then we'll go on to questions
Yeah.
and then move on. Thank you. Thanks, Louise.
That's right. Good afternoon, everybody. As you know, we are giving quarterly updates as to progress on the 6 priority projects from the HBIFR. I will talk to the Extreme Weather Hub and the flood forecasting together because they are codependent. So we are now in phase 2 of the Extreme Weather Hub, which is taking on board the feedback that we have received from phase 1. And
Tsunami advisory. Okay, thank you.
Tsunami.
Yep. This is the exact warning that Nick gave us before the warning came.
All right. A little bit ahead of Nima.
For once.
Just a little.
It's Wellington. Sorry.
That's Wellington as well.
Yeah, that's typical.
Okay.
So we've got to get out of our boat.
Carry on, thanks, Louise.
So we are working on the flood forecasting dashboards, and that work is progressing at pace. We are nearly at the user testing stage, and once we are happy with that, then that will be added to the Extreme Weather Hub, and that will provide the community with flood forecasting data as opposed to just the river levels and rainfall data as has occurred. So that will be a big step forward, and that is what the community has been asking for. The second phase of the flood forecasting system is the work that our hydrology team and flood forecasters will do on adapting the way that we currently do flood modelling by taking a wider look and having an envelope rather than a single set of data. So that will commence towards the end of this year. The Trigger Levels project, we've made great progress with this project. It is CEDAM-led with the TAs and with input from other agencies, and HBRC are there in a supporting and facilitating capacity, but are, and we provide the data and the maps and the hazard layers. We have, with the TAs and CEDAM, 2 pilot communities have been confirmed. That is Esk and Lower Waipawa, and we are just working through with the TAs how that engagement framework with those communities will work, and we will start having community, or the TAs will lead the community interaction and conversations, and HBRC will support with that. We are still working on the third. There's a slight resourcing capacity issue with the TA for the one that we had chosen. So the other 2 will go first, and then we'll move on with the third. The bylaws, so this is progressing. We've engaged an external resource that will work with our asset team and our policy planner who's leading the work to do an analysis of all of our schemes and determine what sort of bylaws we might need based on the way that our schemes are constructed and the types of infrastructure that we have, but that is on track to obviously come back to councillors for input towards the end of this year or early next year, and then out for public consultation probably at the start of the second quarter of next year. I won't talk about reimagining flood resilience because the next paper is on that, and Simon and I will give you an update. And the hazard portal, so that business case is due in October. That was always scheduled for October, but we have widened the scope to include the new Lagoima regulations for including hazard information on limbs. And there's a paper after this as well that will talk about the Lagoima regulations side of that. But we will bring back a business case again towards the end of this year. So that is a synopsis, if you have any questions.
Thanks, Louise. Questions? Councillor Harding.
Sure, Chair. Thanks, Louise. Look, just on the hazard portal, so the business case coming back in October, do we have a sense of what delivery timeframe looks like for that? I accept that it's a complex piece of work now because we're focusing more and more on hazard work.
Yeah. No, I'm sorry. I don't have that. Pip is or was here. But we will be working. It is now dependent on what the Lagoima conversation brings back because we will have to work in with the TAs. If the hazard portal is used as our tool for sharing our natural hazards information with the TAs as required by the Lagoima regulations, then that might widen the scope and take a little bit longer. I'm hoping that we will be able to get some output from that business case that will give us an idea of budget for the next annual plan, and that through the next annual plan we can potentially work through whatever. The hazard portal is there and it's still functioning and it's still fit for purpose and it meets those requirements, but we do know that it's fragile.
Louise, just to add to that question, is that dependent on our TA partners' investment into that, or is that a solely HBRC led?
No, it's solely HBRC.
Okay, thank you.
So it was, I don't know if Katrina wants to talk to that. Yeah.
Thank you. Thanks, Katrina.
Okay, that slightly leads into the next paper, Chair, which we can talk to as well about land information memorandum. Essentially, as you know, the team have been undertaking a business proposal. I've been working with PIP to work with our internal staff to identify what the current layers are in that portal, what needs to be in the portal. Pip, you might want to come up here and talk about the business case on the portal, and before she sits down. And I've been also going out to the TLAs, and so I've met with all staff now of the 5 TLAs, understanding how they use it, what they would like to see, and working with Pip on that. Do you want to add something about where we're at with the portal and what it's dependent on and what that's likely to?
The timeframe of the
Timeframe.
business case, and
Timeframe.
if we know yet how much work will be required for it, was the question.
Yeah, the hazard portal is a fantastic community asset, but it sits on technology that isn't really fit for purpose, particularly as this type of data becomes of more interest to our community. So we need to lift it up and have a look at a few things and answer what is the purpose of the portal and what type of data do we want it to have, what type of data governance do we want to put around it, who owns it and manages it. And once we have the answers to those questions, look at the technology options that exist to serve those purposes. We could do a fix to the existing. It probably won't be what's recommended. I think we will probably look to refactor it so that it serves all of the purposes that are starting to emerge through.
Including legislation change, national environmental standards and hazards, that are, or a national policy statement, I can't remember to GAV, NES, MPS, that are coming at us and what we have to meet in that regard. There is a lot of work happening and coming at us at this time. Of course, that will all feed into a spatial plan for the region.
And the good news is it's all joined up, the effort's all joined up, so I'm not seeing any indication that we're not talking to everyone that needs to be talked to. Thank you.
Definite joined up approach.
Thank you. Councillor Sears?
Thank you. Louise, the pilot for the trigger levels, which we're all been very excited about, the communities have been chosen, and you've also got a yellow light for, I think, fatigue, but have the people actually been chosen, or it's
No.
as far as...
So the TAs are leading that community-facing conversation. Some initial conversations have been had with those communities to make sure that they were happy to be part of the conversation and discussion and chosen as a pilot project, and they have agreed. The people that have been spoken to have agreed. For the ESC, I think they're going through their resilient hub that the Hastings District Council has established there, and they're starting the conversation with them, and then they will take a wider scope. And the lower Waipawa, we had an IPMO Waipawa Stop Bank meeting at the beginning of June, and it was started to be socialised at that community meeting, and Central Hawke's Bay have had good feedback that yes, they want to be part of that conversation, and for that community, that conversation is very much joined in with the Waipawa Stop Bank raising as well, so they kind of think they might have that conversation together. So from an HBRC perspective, we are there in support and to provide them with whatever data and information they ask for.
So there's no point asking us about timelines, etc., because actually it's TA driven.
It's TA driven.
Okay, all right.
Okay. Thank you. Councillor Van Beek? No further questions. Councillor Sears, would you be happy to move the paper?
Happy to move, yep.
And Councillor Harding, second. All those agree, say aye.
Aye.
Those against, carried. Thank you, team. We move straight into the Reimagining Flood Resilience Project update. If we could do a similar thing, Louise.
Yes.
And we just have a summary and we take it as read and then ask questions.
Yeah, I've got a few more slides for this one, and Simon is online, but we will race through it. So again, this is every 2 months we give you an update. Timeline-wise, we are just about to go into phase 2B, which is the stakeholder reference groups and focus groups. There has been a slight delay from the original timeframe proposed for this. It was July to December, but because we've had some delay in the appointment of steering group members from the TAs and a slight delay in engaging an external resource, we've had to push this out. It won't have an overall impact on the on the outcome of the project or the proposed timeline to meet the next LTP deadline, but just to let you know that we are going to be pushing into the beginning of next year. So the technical advisory group, it's up and running. We meet every 3 weeks. The terms of reference have now been agreed, and we are currently focusing on the scheme reviews, the leading practice review, which I think we've spoken to you about before, and also scoping for an economic analysis. And Simon, do you want to speak briefly to the economic analysis?
Happy to. Is my sound okay?
Yep.
Yes.
Great, thank you. Kia ora koutou. Yeah, so this is a pretty important piece of work for this project, this economic analysis. We are working with Infometrics on this piece of work. There are sort of 2 key parts we're looking to scope. The first is what are the economic benefits of the scheme itself, and the second is looking at the economic benefits of actions you might take to enhance the scheme. So it's quite a detailed and technical scope that TAG are working on, but I think a pretty critical output to get rolling. So we're quite keen to show that to you once we get those initial outputs from it. Happy to take questions on how that might be framed.
Right. So steering group appointments, the 3 TAs have all now confirmed appointments to the steering groups. Mana Ahuriri are due to appoint this week, and we are still in discussions with Tamatea Pokai Whenua, but we are hoping to have the first steering group meetings in mid-August.
Just on that, Louise, I think it's just wise to carry on in terms of the steering group and just leave the positions open when the organisations are ready to appoint.
Yes,
thank you.
That's what we had intended. So stakeholder reference groups, the intention is that through the steering groups, we will appoint membership to the stakeholder reference groups and determine focus groups. We plan to commence those meetings in September onwards. We've just engaged an external consultant to bring in the extra resources that we need to run those 2 projects concurrently in parallel, and still have enough resources. We're proposing 12 meetings, 6 for each, plus all the focus groups. So it's important to have enough resourcing and give it the attention that it needs. Focus groups, we haven't determined what these will be like yet. Again, through the steering groups and the stakeholder reference groups, we'll determine how many and where and who. And next steps, so obviously this project, as we have discussed previously, sits underneath the flood risk in Hawke's Bay comms and engagement piece. We will be at Ohiti Road and Mahu Road drop-in on Saturday alongside the IPMO team to talk to the community and start socialising the reimagining project. We will schedule those steering group meetings as soon as we can for mid-August, and then work with the steering groups to appoint to stakeholder reference groups. And next week we have a workshop with the external consultant that has been engaged to really build on that framework for stakeholder reference groups, get a schedule of meetings and a timeline, so that next time we meet, hopefully we will be able to share a lot more detail around what that might look like. And then the TAG continues to look at the scheme reviews, see where the gaps are, see what other extra modelling or information we might want Tonkin and Taylor to add to those existing scheme reviews and models that they have prepared already. The leading practice review that Matt DeBoer is undertaking, which is looking at similar projects across Aotearoa, but also overseas, the economic analysis and the nature-based solutions piece of work, which is just coming to an end, and that report will fit into the reimagining project, and other research. So that's pretty much us. Is there anything you want to add, Simon? Sorry, I've raced through that. But.
Thank you, Simon. Questions, team? Or anything from our lead champions, Councillor Kuda?
This could be a question for the Chief Executive. Paragraph 4, the umbrella of the Reducing Flood Risk in Hawke's Bay Communication Engagement Package. Can you update us on what the package looks like, the timelines and expectations around that? Can you help us there with that?
I can do. I don't have it on my fingertips. Happy to follow up.
can we get updated on that and
Yep.
understand fully
Yep.
what it looks like and its rollout?
Yep, happy to do a follow-up.
Te Wairama, could you add to that?
Tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou all councillors. Just in regards to the recommendation that was taken during the last meeting around that website, what we have live at the moment is a reducing flood risk landing page on our front page of our website, which gives access to some of the assets that we went through in our last meeting. So the animation, some of them are still in progress. So the 20-page document and pulling it together is still being worked on at the moment. And we did talk to the rebuilding of the engagement hub, which remains live currently, into the community conversations landing page as well. Unfortunately, within the week that we took the decision, we had a resignation in the team from our web design development lead in comms, but we have someone starting next week and we will get onto that as soon as they're here. So it's first. So the assets that are available are there on the website front page for councillors to access at the moment.
Thank you for the update.
Is there a whole program though, in terms of, that's part of it?
Yeah.
What does the whole comms and delivery program look like?
And we can come back to you with that.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Sears? Oh, no, your hand wasn't up. Apologies. Any further questions? There are none. Councillor Sears, are you happy to receive the update?
Yes, sure.
Yep.
Councillor Van Dyk, all those who agree say aye.
Aye.
Those against, carried. Thank you. Since we have Simon online, and I know you have to go soon, Simon, team, are you happy that we move the Clifton to Tangoil Coastal Hazard Strategy project up? Well, we need Chris for that, I'm guessing. No?
Chris has had to go to the dentist, I'm afraid.
Oh, okay.
Simon, are you happy to talk to that?
Happy to, thank you. Yep.
Thank you. Hand it to you.
Got a chair. Thank you, team, for moving that up for me. I appreciate that. Look, it's really just a brief update on our engagement to date. As you'll be aware, this council directed that engagement take place over the course of this year. That process is now well underway, so the paper really runs through where that's up to and what the key next steps are. But I'm aware it's been a very long day for you all, so happy to go straight to questions on the paper.
Thank you, Simon. Questions for Simon?
Yes, Simon, time frame and costs, where would I find those?
The time frame for the engagement process, they were in the previous paper. So the time frame is that we intend to report back to council in February next year with the outcome of engagement. So a key target for this work is to make sure that there are some outcomes that can feed into the long-term plan process beginning sort of mid next year. So we plan to report back in February to allow that to happen. In terms of the costs of the process, we probably haven't reported those up previously to this table. It remains a co-funded project in part. You'll see in the paper there's some discussion about where the funding has come from historically and a few tweaks that are happening as we speak, but it remains a co-funded project. So for now, we are within budget for this year, and TAG is monitoring that on a monthly basis.
And the budget amount, do you know the budget?
Yes, I do. So in broad form, typically we had 100,000 per year per council. This year we are down on that given the decision by Hastings, but there is some carry forward from last year. So top of my head, I think we have about 200-ish, 218-ish to work with this year.
Okay.
So Napier hasn't committed their 100, but that actually sits there in their reserves. If they can see that we require it, they'll actually free it up. And Hastings at this stage have given their staff in kind. So anything in kind we get out of Hastings, it comes for free, so to speak.
I wonder, Madam Chair, whether it incorporated into the update reports are one, the progress, any milestones on the way through, to February, if that's the date, the close-off date, and progress to date of budget against of expenditure against budget.
Yep. If we can have those included, Simon, that would be fantastic. Thank you.
Happy to do so, Chair. Yep.
Thank you. Councillor Harding.
Kia ora, Chair. Kia ora, Simon. Look, my question is just around the alignment between where focus groups are now and where the strategy is at, and what you're doing about any lack of alignment. How are we dealing with that? Because having dipped into those, at least one of those community exercises, there seems to be a lot of excitement about hexagonal bits of concrete and sand, which is not necessarily where the strategy's at. So how are we dealing with that, please?
Yeah, thank you for that question. It's a good one. That's fair to say that there's kind of two key parts to this engagement, right? One is what's the kind of envelope of affordability. That's kind of the key task. But secondly, is the community still supportive of the primary proposals and projects on the coast, right? So for the south, you're quite right. There's been a recent project just completed with these concrete blocks. The community have asked us formally to look into that as a possible complementary action on the coast. It would foreseeably complement what's in the strategy currently by providing some sort of structure to the gravel crest. So that's a piece of work we are looking into. It may well be complementary, and it may allow the gravel crest to be lower but still effective from a coastal kind of process point of view. So that's for the south. We're looking into that. For the north, you're quite right. There is a lot of interest in sand. Sand is part of the strategy, but I think the current thinking from some at least is that there's not a lot of support for the gravel being placed on the coast. They'd rather see much more sand. So quite how that plays out technically remains a work in process, but I think it's important to make sure that when it is consulted on formally, there's no surprises in here, and that if we're asking for more funding to go towards these projects, there's at least some broad support for the projects themselves.
Thanks, Simon. And a question from me, and what I take from what you've just said, for instance, the community out of West Shore are looking to have dredged sand come from the Ahuriri Channel over to help renourish the beach with sand. So have those ideas been explored, and is that an open option for that community currently?
It's a yes in part, I suppose. So the strategy itself does say exactly that. It says that for building resilience at West Shore, look into bringing sand from port dredgings, but continue the gravel nourishment on the coast for the inundation risk. The strategy does say that. There are no resource consents, though, in place to deposit sand further south, where it would ideally be from a coastal process point of view. So strategically, yes, that's the direction, but the specifics of how that would be achieved will need to be sorted out through a resource consent process down the line. You might recall that this council did start a resource consent process for sand at West Shore a couple of years ago in partnership with Napier City Council, but that process ran out of funds to continue, so it was paused. If this work goes through as proposed, funding should be available to pick up that consent process and carry it on, but we can't obviously predict the outcome of that at this stage.
Okay, thank you, Simon. Are there any further questions?
So moved.
Yeah. Thank you, Councillor Van Beek, and second, Councillor McIntosh. All those who agree say aye.
Aye.
Those against, carried. Thank you for the update, Simon. Good day.
Good team, thank you.
Thank you. Team, we're back to the natural hazards information for LIMS. So I can invite up Gavin and Katrina. Thank you.
Afternoon, councillors. We've had a bit of a sneak peek into this paper, or contents of this paper, with one of the earlier items. Look, I'm going to just give you a really quick overview of what the new legislation covers and what it means for us. And then Katrina's going to talk about what are we doing and our next steps. So back in 2023, the previous government introduced some amendments to the Local Government Official Information Meetings Act, LGOIMA. And those amendments were trying to improve and enhance the way councils across the country shared and distributed information that they hold about natural hazards. So first and foremost, LGOIMA is trying to shine a light on the business of council and the information that we all hold. I think this organisation is already doing a great job. We heard it earlier that the Hazards Portal, launched a decade ago, is a showpiece of, or key pillar of this organisation and the other councils sharing information that we have about natural hazards. That is one way and means that we already have of providing information to our community and one another councils about natural hazard information. There's also our online publications library, because not necessarily all information about hazards is shown in maps. So these different places are ways and means of the councils in Hawke's Bay coming together and making sure that we share the same information, and that is then also passed through and into LIMS, local information memorandum. Now, this council is not responsible for processing or issuing LIMS. That remains the responsibility of the city and district councils. But to make their jobs easier, these amendments to the Lagoima Act ensuring that the regional councils have certain roles and responsibilities to make sure that the hazard information that we hold is indeed passed through in a certain fashion and consistent fashion to the city and district councils to enable them to do their job when it comes to issuing LIMS. There are also regulations coming into effect in middle of October, and those regulations under Lagoima will place extra responsibilities on our organisation in the way in which we provide that natural hazard information to the territorial authorities. It's not just a matter of providing the GIS data and the technical publication reports themselves, but it's also about providing some plain language summaries to the territorial authorities, so again they can pass that simple language information through in the LIMS they issue. And how we might do that across the 5 councils,
Yeah, so we've
Katrina can talk to.
So over the last month or so, I've met with each of the TLAs, GMs and staff that prepare LIMS, first and foremost to understand what their current process is, what they're currently using from us, and how we might make that better for them. Way back in the day, I was part of the central government working group that looked at this piece of legislation as it was being drafted, and part of the working group that helped form up the regulations. And the Hawke's, as Gavin noted, the Hawke's Bay Hazard Portal was actually held up as an example of how to do it well. There are some issues with the portal. We won't resurface those again. We already know about those. What transpired in meeting with all of the councils of our region is that they all do it slightly differently, but are all relying on largely the information that's coming out of the portal. And so we need to go through that as an organisation and make sure it meets all of the regulations. The GMs at my level of each of the councils have agreed that there should, and so we need to be really clear about when we as an organisation are releasing hazard information, we now have to be even more explicit about what that information is, provide the plain English summary, that we are providing it in a consistent fashion to all of the same councils all at the time. We are responsible for providing information at a regional level, not at a property level. And so we will continue to do that, but we will be much more structured about how we do that and how we receive inquiries into this organisation from the TLAs. And these are the kinds of conversations that we've been having. Currently, our colleagues they have relationships with all people in this organisation, and they will reach in directly to those officers and ask for information. And there's no control mechanisms around how that information is passed out. Once it's out there, it then it's information that's known and needs to be included. So we're putting business processes around the sharing of information. And to have a governance structure, and I use the governance term in a loose term, as in seniority management governance of that with the DMs for the purposes of first and foremost for hazard information for LIMS, but we can see that growing as we move more into spatial planning. So those are the kinds of conversations that we've been having to date, and we've got an internal team working across the organisation with Gavin, with Louise, with Pip, to bring all of our council's hazard functions together, because of course they are spread right across, including CEDAM. There's also some work we need to do with CEDAM in the coming years that this will also feed into. So that's really just a state of play of where we're at the moment. And it was just to give you a heads up on what our new regulatory responsibilities are, and of course, potential liabilities if we get that wrong.
Thank you for the update. I'll go Tanya, then Councillor Sears.
Kia ora, thanks for that. Is there potential for conflicting information? I see that, I think it's in relation to LIMS, that city councils, district councils can provide additional information which is not sourced from HBRC. Is there a potential for a conflict? And if there is, how does that get resolved?
I would be surprised if there was a conflict in terms of information, given the types of hazard information we're required to provide at a regional level. We're talking hazard tsunami, we're talking earthquake, liquefaction, flooding. The different information that a district council will have that a regional council will not have is about those flooding areas that are linked to stormwater ponding areas that regional council will not have information on as much as a district council would.
I'm just raising it because of our discussions around the future development strategy and how the council's landed on different places.
I don't think that is based on a different understanding of hazard. I think that's based on a different understanding of technical remedies around that hazard.
It's fair, yeah.
Councillor Sears.
Thank you. Thank you for the paper and being explicit around this problem, because we know it's a really big problem, and for working with the TAs and finding what we probably suspected, which was everyone was doing it slightly differently and it wasn't necessarily clear. I mean, everyone understands this. Of course, the hazard mapping needs to be good. Our hazard portal's been up. We know that for a long time. We know it hasn't been used necessarily in the way it could have been by developers or even people buying houses. But what the paper doesn't talk about is the fact that there is a whole group of people with massive collateral damage from this now surfacing in the way onto LIMS, because people own properties which they've purchased which did not have these hazards on their LIMS. Now when they go to sell them, and this is now being applied to them, which it should, because we should all understand the hazards, there's massive implications for our ratepayers, which is the real point. I know that's not our...
Well, I might just, I'm just going to jump in there through to you, I'm sorry. There is no new information being added to the portal except for the flooding hazards from Cyclone Gabriel, and what we have been clear to discover is that actually the TLAs have been consistently using the portal for a very, very long time for their land information memorandum. So none of this information is new and has already been included on LIMS. Okay, there may be individual circumstances where a landowner might argue that they haven't or it hasn't been. That is something a district council will need to work through. But with all due respect, Councillor, I don't believe that the hazard portal hasn't been used. Quite the contrary, I think it has been, and to good effect.
Thank you. Just through you, Chair, I'm not going to argue about that now, but I will say there are a number of examples that have turned up over and over the past few weeks that suggest otherwise. And all I want to raise with this council is that there is an issue here that is not being addressed through the conversation and the further requirements that we need. And as a ratepayers representative, it's not satisfactory. Thank you.
And I think those inconsistencies and fixes, I mean, I'm hearing now that the portal and the way that we work together in the same system is going to address any of them, any of those.
And I'm not actually making a comment on our portal, which has had this information for a long time. I'm talking about this new process, the way it's now being applied in a way which has consequences that we're just not having a decent conversation about. Thank you.
Thank you, noted. Councillor Curtin, then Councillor Harding.
Similar line of questions, Katrina. With the legislation, I'm really keen to understand the reach that we're able to influence now. You're saying that I think you called it a high level of governance over this. Or it sounds like an agreement as opposed to legislated capacity, but you might be able to explain that. So the reach that we're able to exert, the influence we can have on the language used, and should the information change that we come upon fresh information or new information, what's our ability to withdraw, amend information that has found its way, say, for example, into a LIM?
It is still the responsibility of the TLAs to prepare the LIM. It is the Regional Council's responsibility to share and provide to those TLAs all non-hazard information in accordance with the regulations. So we cannot influence what a council, a district or city council chooses to put on the LIM. That is their decision. In terms of information needing to be replaced or updated, that is absolutely where that information has been provided by a regional council, is on the regional council to share that information where that information's changed, updated, modified, and provide that again in accordance with the regulations.
Can we require them to do that?
Require?
The TA. For example, we've got a Cat 2 property, we've upgraded the stop bank, we're taking Cat 2 off, or there's a LIM talks about flood risk. Can we insist that they then amend the LIM?
No.
What can we do?
We are only responsible for the provision of hazard information, not for the preparation of land information memorandums.
So we haven't got a big reach, really?
No.
Okay.
And also, can I add that LIMs are prepared by the city and district councils as a snapshot of information at a particular point in time.
Yeah, that's an issue.
It is an issue. Councillor Harding.
Your Chair. Look, there's been a lot of publicity in recent weeks around hazard in the context of climate change and in the context of the limits of the ability of government to underwrite climate risks at the property level, and the implication that in the future, or we're evolving towards a time where essentially buyer or owner beware. And so that comes to the point about, my question is, in that context, what are we aspiring our hazard portal to be, particularly in the context of the redevelopment, the business case we're looking at it? Is it our aspiration, the intention for it to be a one-stop shop so that in future individual property owners will be able to go to that hazard portal, or are we still going to be in this two-speed situation where you've got a hazard portal which has partial information, but you still have to go to the TLA and get a full LIM? So what's our aspiration? What does the future look like?
I think there are other aspects or other parts of a LIM that will never be covered by the hazard portal. So we wouldn't want the hazard portal to be the only point that a potential property purchaser would go to. We always want them to go to the TLA to obtain a LIM. Building consent information, resource consent information, environmental health information. On a LIM, you can get information about how many noise complaints you've had in an area. You're never going to get that from the hazard portal, of course. We are working with the TLAs, and that's part of the conversations that we're having about what is it that we're wanting the hazard portal to be. Is it the one-stop shop? Is it... And at the moment it is well utilised, and that is part of the problem, is that in fact it has reached its limitations based on the numbers of people that are accessing it. When it's too much, it's actually slowing it down or crashing the site. So PIP is working on the on the technological aspects to that. And without diving into that area, you know, the question is whether the hazard portal then is replicated by a council's a district council's GIS layers, or whether we have a combined GIS system for the region, which if you're talking about spatial planning, then we start talking about what that looks like too. So I think those conversations are definitely happening or about to happen, and we're moving in that direction, but we haven't landed on if the portal is the one-stop shop for hazards, not yet.
Okay. Can I just make the point that if we don't get there, then that whole system of the future will not work. If property owners cannot, at least for natural hazard data, go without having to go through the process of an individual limb, if there is not something easily accessible that relates to their property value, particularly the insurable value and the whole insurance and finance side of it, then it's going to break down.
It's for natural
It's not
hazards.
just at the point of sale, it's every time you renew your annual insurance. So my advice would be that's where we need to aspire, that at least that chunk of it we deliver. Accepted that there'll be other parts in the way that will still require a limb. Yes.
Through you, Chair, I think absolutely that's HBRC's intent, is that the hazard portal will be certainly our point of call for all natural hazard data. Now, given what the limb regulations are saying, and we have those agreements in place that HBRC as the regional council will be doing in accordance with the regulations, putting the hazard layer there. Hastings, Napier, Central Hawke's Bay and Wairoa, we're advising you here it is, and we're providing access to you through here. Then they are duty bound by the legislation to receive that and do with that what they need to do in terms of a limb.
Thank you.
Thank you. Nick, if you could wrap this up, if you know other questions.
I think to summarise this issue, and we had a chat as chief executives and with the mayors and chair recently, essentially the world of hazards is becoming increasingly regulated, and the hazard portal, which began its life in let's get the best information we can out there to people in the best way possible, is now having to be updated to cope with a world that is regulated and litigious. So putting business process around updates and putting in protocols about sharing information with the TAs is an important step because we're in a different world.
Thank you, Nick. If there are no further questions, can I please have a mover for receiving this update? Councillor Williams and Councillor Harding. All those who agree, say aye.
Aye.
Those against, carried. Thank you. And you might want to stay, Katrina. We have a verbal update from Hawke's Bay CDM Group Joint Committee that was held this Monday. And I guess it is to just update on the service level agreements. That's what I'm guessing.
Right.
Off the top of your head, just like that.
So I think to cut it short there was agreement across all councils that we go forth with the preferred option that we've had workshopped to us on the service level agreements, which essentially looks like for us continuing to collect a regional rate for civil defence until the long-term plan for TLAs, they are able to build themselves. So there will be a period of pass-through from us as a region to the districts to help them transition up until the point they will budget themselves in long-term plan.
Yep, that's right. Well understood that the service level agreement sets up the roles and responsibilities clearly so that everybody can start to get on, and we will have an implementation plan around that transformation strategy. But the SLA was the first point for that, for us to enable us to get on and do that.
Will we fully fund that, or is there a budget already in play?
There's a budget already in play
same
for
budget.
the TA?
Yes. Yeah. For the TA?
Is there an already existing budget on the TA side for their responsiveness, capability of capacity?
Through you, Chair, I'm not sure. I would probably think not. Everybody needs to start thinking about what funding they need to include in their long-term plans, and we'll start to build those budgets from
There's some
here.
variation across the TAs. Some have already got some budget provision and will need to seek more under annual plan, and some have got little or none.
That's correct. And we've passed through from the regional fund or CEDM budgets $160,000, as we discussed previously, to each of the TAs. That is being passed through as we speak for this financial year.
Essentially, a large part of this is devolving more locally to the TAs, their functions, but we're doing it in a transitional period up until LTP, where they become the full funders of their local response.
Yeah, I just comment that from the get-go, there was always, and I even think it's in legislation, it'd be good to see that there were existing responsibilities of the TAs.
Yeah.
They needed to have budgeted those and incorporated capacity internally. I just don't think they ever have.
I think, Chair, through you, Chair, I think that's the point of the service level agreement, is to make it very explicit. So this region's never had a service level agreement in place. In fact, very many don't. To make it very explicit about their statutory obligations, those are set out, and to make it clear what they are responsible for. That is now under no illusion.
Fantastic, thank you. Well done, team. We have our last item, the minor item of regionalisation. Councillor Williams, you have the last 5 minutes of our meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I've tried to save you all that time by not asking any questions in the first 5 papers. I was trying to...
Well
yeah,
done.
right.
Consideration.
I didn't ask any questions.
It wasn't the purpose of it.
Okay, let's get
Hypothetically. No, you're wrong. First time for the whole training, no doubt. Look, regionalism, just briefly, as the Prime Minister observed on TV after meeting the mayors at the end of 2023, we have been an exemplar region of a united voice, understanding our community's priorities and communicating them to Wellington. Within that, the Regional Recovery Agency has, it just deserves absolutely huge credit for channeling our message to Wellington and leveraging funding, the likes of which this region's never received. So that's a really good news story of the Hawke's Bay councils working together. Mm-hmm. What I was astounded, frankly, to find out recently is that we were also the thought leaders on water reform,
Yes.
Three Waters reform, right? Yes. We had a Morrison Lowe report in 2019 that said Napier and Hastings should share the costs of what the smaller districts need to do to ensure that our rivers are what the region deserves and what the health of those rivers requires. It's otherwise utterly unaffordable. And I was astounded to hear that it's essentially been ring-fenced within Waterco. I don't know where we can take this to the point where Central Hawke's Bay has had no choice to make its rates affordable to halve its planned capital works program, as announced in the paper yesterday, from 200 million. And I just think we have a moral duty within the urban areas of Napier and Hastings to put a small amount towards those smaller districts. It might be $50, $60 a year to save them paying $13,000 a year in 2040, right? Because one day we're going to need them. So I don't know where we take this, and the Napier stormwater deficit is a classic case in point. What's that, $200 million we're under for 1 in 50? Mm-hmm. So, for goodness sake, can we not take into the next triennium, unless it's too late to do so, a motivation to regionalise the cost of providing Three Waters services to all of our communities as a region, or the point of Three Waters reform is utterly defeated, regional water done well, or local water done badly. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Williams. And I think we will pass that message on to the mayors.
Please do.
Under your guidance.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Kia ora. Well done. We are on time. Team, we clawed back.
3 minutes old.
That's right.